somewhere between 1 in 4 and 1 in 3 women will have an abortion at some point in her life. And when you think about those numbers, that's 1 out of every 4 people, women you know or have met on the street or in your family, your friends and your family members. Abortion is part of women's reproductive lives. And to take that out of women's reproductive lives is really taking out a major piece of healthcare. Our job as healthcare providers is to take care of people. And this is a decision that belongs solely between a provider and a woman, because legislators and policymakers really should never be deciding what medical conditions are relevant, what medical conditions are not relevant, and what healthcare should and should not be delivered.
I think about a woman that I took care of in my practice many years ago, who was Catholic and had 4 children. And she felt like that was enough children for her and her husband, and that her family was complete. So she had a tubal ligation. And despite this, she became pregnant because no method of contraception works all of the time. And she had that baby. So then her husband had a vasectomy. And she became pregnant again. And she told me it would kill me to have to go through another pregnancy and to add a child to our family. It would not allow me to take care of the children that I have. And I was so grateful to be able to care for her that day and allow her to end her pregnancy in the way that she wanted to, and to be able to go back to her family, to her children, and have the life and the family that she chose.
When I think about women of color, and for me personally, thinking about Black women in particular, there is a very strong history of reproductive injustice, reproductive oppression in our communities. People may or may not be familiar with forced sterilizations that occurred for Black women, Indigenous women, Latina or Latinx women throughout the last century, and as recently as a few years ago, that's been documented. And so it's incredibly important, I think, for all women, all people really, to be able to make decisions about their bodies that they think are best for themselves. But I think I would be remiss to not really speak to how important it is for women of color to be able to have agency about their bodies, about their lives, and create the kind of lives that they would like.
I see women who become pregnant as a result of their mental illness. For example, women who have schizophrenia and might be psychotic and not able to actually think clearly get taken advantage of. I think it's absolutely wrong that a woman like that would be forced to carry a fetus to term. I still hold many Christian values dear to my heart. I also hold dear to my heart the safety of women, and I take very seriously my duty as a physician to protect the safety of my patients. And my main concern about this bill is that it negatively impacts healthcare providers' ability to care well for their patients.
Even if you are a woman without a cardiac history, pregnancy can be complicated. To give you a sense, me and you sitting in this room are pumping about 5 liters of blood per minute, just talking. If me and you decide to go to the gym after this and we're on a treadmill, we're gonna pump around 9 to 10 liters of blood per minute. A woman that's pregnant in her 3rd trimester, sitting across from me talking, is gonna pump 9 to 10 liters of blood per minute. So they're functionally on a treadmill. And that's just with the normal heart. So you can imagine if your heart function is impaired in some way and not able to pump the normal amount of blood even when you're not pregnant, it gets to be more complicated when you are pregnant. Now that's not to say that you cannot have a successful pregnancy, you certainly can, but there are challenges. Women who have heart dysfunction or who otherwise have impairment of heart valve function or are missing portions of their heart or who knows what else, they're at much higher risk for heart rhythm disorders, they're at higher risk for recurrent heart failure, they're at higher risk for sudden death, and those are just 3 of the multitude of complications that they can have.
When you compare America to other developed nations in the world, our maternal morbidity and mortality is extremely higher compared to them. And the fact that it's so much higher for Black women specifically across the board, again, there are other factors that are at play. You know, if it comes down to structural racism, access to care, you know, there's a lot of pieces that we need to figure out and we need to do better. So to look at a woman and say, we know the numbers, we know that you're more likely to, you know, go through a pregnancy, go through labor and delivery, and come out with serious injury and or lose your life. And then we turn around and say to her, you know, but to have an abortion is wrong, and to take your autonomy away and say that you can't make a choice that could, you know, save your life. And to say that you're pro-life and then not allowing her to have that choice to possibly save her own life, that doesn't make any sense to me.
All these social determinants of health are interrelated. A woman's right to have full spectrum reproductive health, which is, I want to have a healthy baby and I need access to food, clothing, and shelter to do that, or I'm not ready to be a family, or I need to get access to reproductive health, no matter what it is, you know, abortion being part of that. But not having access to that is, you can see the direct correlation with all these other epidemics of social issues of homelessness, addiction, substance use, of mental health. And every woman, you know, that wants to have a child should have the capacity to have a child when she's ready. So, but what's really interesting is late to care and late to being able to make choices. So when women are living on the street and they have substance use and mental health, and Maslow's hierarchy of need, that you're trying to find food, clothing, and shelter, then the consequences later on, like I said, to someone who's not ready to be a family, and then you're dealing with foster care, then what happens with foster care and the impact all the way down the line. So you wouldn't think about this one little issue of women's right to choose would have such a huge trickle down, but it does.
When you think about the maternal mortality epidemic for Black women in this country, you know, it is particularly striking to think about, you know, a lot of the places where people are pursuing these abortion bans are also places where, you know, maternal mortality is the worst, where infant mortality is the worst. And I don't think that that's an accident, because, you know, I think a lot of what we talk about when we talk about these abortion bans is really based on sort of this premise of safety, but actually kind of based in trying to control communities and control how people are able to create the lives that they want for themselves.
After medical school, people go on to choose specialties, and many specialties include reproductive health care. The most obvious are OBGYN and family medicine, but many others do interact with reproductive health care in different ways. So I would argue that every clinician, and certainly every doctor or nurse practitioner, advanced practice clinician, providing reproductive health must be able to safely empty a uterus in the setting of an emergency. So not only must all OBGYNs and family docs and people who take care of reproductive health be able to do all the skills of counseling patients and referring them for care and seeing them before an abortion and after an abortion, they also have to be able to safely empty a uterus of a pregnancy. And this comes up all the time outside of an abortion. For example, a patient who's having what we call a miscarriage or an early pregnancy loss sometimes needs an emergent procedure to empty their uterus. So what I am very worried about is, how can we make sure that these residents who are trained in family medicine or OBGYN in states with abortion bans, how are we going to make sure that they have the skills they need to provide emergency care for patients, for example, who are having a miscarriage and who are bleeding heavily and need to have an immediate removal of the pregnancy? So that is something I'm very concerned about. And so what I could see is, again, not only will the patients who are cared for in these states with an abortion ban be at risk of not having the care they need and needing to travel and having delays and harmful effects of that, but that all of these doctors and family physicians and OBGYNs who are graduated in these states will not be able to care for all of their future patients competently. So I actually think that the effect of these bans will be much farther reaching and go much farther beyond the states in which the bans exist and may affect people globally.
Communities of color or lower socioeconomic status, a lot of patients don't have super convenient access to their doctor. So they may say, oh, I think I'm pregnant, and they'll call for an appointment and they'll say, great, we'll see you in 3 months. So that right there, they have no access to a doctor. They don't have any opportunity to have a conversation about their options. If it's safe to move forward with the pregnancy, they can have new developments. They may have not even been to a doctor for 5 years, between their last pregnancy and this one.
The problem with abortion bans is that women who seek these services very much have considered their situation, and they have really put their lives in the context of this pregnancy. Most of them have children already, and they understand what another child would add to their family structure, and they've made the decision that that's not something that they're able to do at that time. We know how hard it can be already, even when there's not a ban, for women to get to a clinic, to take a day off work, to find childcare. All of that can be really challenging, especially because most people who are having abortions don't have resources, and that's part of the reason why they're having the abortion. If you then put a barrier where they can't get to a clinic that's within their state, it makes it hard for them to get to us, and they will come, but they'll have to travel, and some of them will never get there. And that's tragic, because they've already thought through what is best for them. Part of these bans will cause suffering, and there will be women who have judged their lives, judged their circumstances, judged what they can handle at this point in their lives, who will never be able to get the abortion that they've judged that they need. And that's not for the state to decide.
The way that I try to really approach healthcare in general for everybody is to be able to really respect their wishes. And my goal is to really follow their lead. And part of that is, if they come in pregnant, to be able to talk about all of their pregnancy options. And I think one of the most important ways that we can build trust from the beginning is my being able to say, what do you want to happen with this pregnancy? Do you want to continue the pregnancy and parent? Do you want to continue the pregnancy and have an adoption? Do you want to end the pregnancy? And I will support you equally in any of those 3 routes, whatever works the best for you. That's the reason I do my job. And it's incredibly important to show the person sitting in front of me who, as I said, may have a tremendous amount of distrust of the healthcare system, to say, you're in control, I'm following your lead. I believe what your decision is right, and I can't make that decision for you.
Help us stop the bans. Go to acluga.org/stopthebans.